Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Hack. In this video, we'll be going over an easy, beginner-friendly solo build for New World. This is actually going to be our version of a Templar class for the game. That's a lot of fun to play early on, and it's very strong. A lot of defensive potential with crowd control, stun, and knockback capabilities. We've got strong offensive combos using Spear as your primary weapon, and then that Life Staff for your backup weapon, adding even more defense and passive healing. This build is going to be great starting out for all types of encounters, PvE or PvP. So let's jump right into it. All right, so let's start this off by talking about attributes for the build. With the Spear as your main damaging weapon, you're going to want to invest either in Dexterity or Strength. Now, the Spear actually scales first as primary with Dexterity. So while Strength can increase your damage of your Spear, Dexterity is going to actually increase your damage a lot more, almost double in some cases. So the primary damaging stat that you want to increase will definitely be Dexterity. Now, you shouldn't necessarily start off with Dexterity. What I recommend, especially if you are brand new to the game, is invest those first maybe 20 points or so actually into the Constitution attribute. Constitution is great, especially when starting out the game, because it increases your overall health, which of course is going to increase your survivability. It's going to help you fight for longer without dying. So put about 20-25 points into Constitution, and then start pumping the remainder of your stats as you level up into Dexterity. Dexterity also has a lot of great passive milestones. Those are what you get when you get to 50, 100, 150 different milestone markers, all the way up to 300 attribute points. And things like that. Crit damage, dodge rolling, those are going to be a focus of this build as well. Now for our backup weapon, we are using the Life Staff, and Life Staff actually scales up with the Focus attribute. Now, I'm not going to recommend that you put a lot of points into Focus to start with. You definitely want to focus on damage as a solo build, and mobility. We'll be doing a lot of dodging and blocking, so early on you won't need a ton of healing. Just a little passive extra healing from the Life Staff is fine, and you don't really need to put points into Focus right away. The one thing you do want to be on the lookout for is any gear pieces that do have Focus as a stat on them. Ideally Dexterity and Focus, but something with just a plain boost to Focus is going to be a nice addition as well. For example, I was able to pick up this medium chest piece. This gives me a bonus to Dexterity and Focus, which is really nice. Let's talk a little bit about consumables that you'll want to have on hand. Now, as soon as you start the game, or very early on, you'll get a basic food recipe, and that's going to last you for quite a while. Even if you upgrade that over time, you'll still want to make sure you have food active all the time. The nice thing about most foods is they do include a passive health regeneration. So if you lose just a little bit of health during combat, you don't need to worry about switching over to your Life Staff and healing yourself up. You can just let the health regeneration portion of the food handle that for you. Now, for some trickier combat situations, especially early on in the game when you're still leveling up that Life Staff, you definitely will want to have a lot of health potions on hand. That's true for pretty much any build starting off in New World. Health potions are really useful. So I would recommend buying some of those either from your first settlement, or you can actually craft them yourself fairly easily. And just having those on hand, basically having them slotted on your character at all times, just for emergencies if you need them, is going to be the way to go. Now later on, you can also add more advanced potions. There are potions for mana recovery. There's also health regeneration potions, which are actually quite nice. You can stack those regeneration potions with the basic health potion. You can obviously also have your Life Staff for healing. So there's a lot of good options, especially as you level up later on in the game. All right, so let's talk about gear next. And just for sort of a beginner-focused build, here's what I would focus on in terms of armor. So one thing I really like about New World is the different armor weights, and it's called equip loads. And basically you have three options. Your build can either be light, medium, or heavy, and each of those has different passive bonuses. So light armor lets you deal 20% more damage. You also have the fastest and furthest dodge roll mechanic while wearing light armor. Medium armor, you still have a dodge, but it's a little bit shorter. It's more like a quick hop. And then you have 10% bonus damage dealt, and your crowd control debuffs also last 10% longer. And then for heavy armor, you have a much slower dodge. It's very short range as well. You have increased block stability, which means you can block for longer. And then your crowd control debuffs last 20% longer. Now for soloing PvE content especially, light armor is actually a lot of fun to play. We're incorporating a lot of the dodge mechanics with this build, which also go very well with dexterity style weapons. So it's a lot of dodging out of combat, pushing back into combat for more damage, dodging back out, casting your life staff, going back in for more spear attacks. So it's a really fun play style. And in my opinion, light armor being in that light equip load range is the best for that. So there's different ways you can do it. Obviously, each gear piece that you wear is either light, medium, or heavy. And basically, when you're in this range, that's how you designate your entire build as light. So the way I've done it is I only have, I think, 2 pieces of medium. Yeah, so my chest is medium, and then the helmet is medium as well. So 2 pieces of medium, and then 3 pieces of light. So if you do that, 2 pieces of medium, 3 pieces of light, you'll have a good sort of balance for a little bit of defensive, armor buffs from the medium armor, while still maintaining that longer dodge. It's actually a roll dodge when you're wearing light armor, which is really cool. Now, in terms of weapons, we're going spear and life staff. So in terms of the spear, what do you want on this? The spear that I had on this build is not ideal. It's got strength. Remember, we want to focus on dexterity. But it does have constitution, which is nice for a little bit of extra health. The main thing you'll want, though, eventually is a spear with a gem slot and then with a trait that you like. So there's many different weapon traits. One of the best ones I've found so far is this trait called Vicious. It gives you additional critical damage, about 7% bonus crit damage, which is really good. Dexterity weapons tend to have the highest crit chance, so a bonus to your critical damage ends up being quite strong. In addition to that, I did find a gem that I liked as well. My spear has a gem slot, so you can put that right in there, and it gives me another trait called Gambit. This does 9% damage while your stamina is not full. So basically how that works is as long as I am roll dodging, my stamina is not full, then I'm doing extra damage. And like we mentioned earlier, we'll be doing a lot of roll dodging just for the maneuverability to avoid damage. You really don't want to take damage as a light armor build. You want to avoid it as much as possible. But while we're avoiding damage with, our roll dodge, we're doing more damage with that Gambit trait from the cut gem on our spear. So again, this isn't an end game setup yet. This is just sort of the basic setup to get started with. This is what I would recommend. So then that brings us to weapon mastery, and I want to talk about the skills and the passives you should be looking for in our spear skill line, and then as well as the life staff. So as far as spear goes, again, it's a really fun weapon to use in New World. A lot of offensive and defensive combos can be pulled off with the spear, and it's really good for soloing because it is so versatile, I think. Now, as far as the 3 main abilities that I'm using, we have Vault Kick, we have Sweep, and then Skewer. Now, I would say Vault Kick and Sweep are probably the 2 ones that you'd want the most and to get first. And then Skewer is sort of like a third sort of optional skill. You can replace this with other skills if you prefer them. Now, the reason why I like Vault Kick, this is basically a stun. So you leap forward on your spear, does 75% weapon damage, and it applies stun for 1.5 seconds. Now, you can amplify this further with the different passives that you can get for Vault Kick. So there's Relentless Blows. This gives you Empower after a successful hit on targets below 50% health. That's going to increase your damage done by 20% for 5 seconds. That's a really nice buff to have. And then also Continuous Motion. Cooldowns for other spear abilities are reduced by 30% on a successful hit. So you get basically 2 really good buffs from using your Vault Kick. Now, another really strong ability that I liked was Sweep. Sweep the target's legs, dealing 75% weapon damage and knocking them down. So we have, for our 2 main abilities, both of them are either a stun or a knockdown, which is really nice for that crowd control. Like I said, it helps you avoid damage. And then we have some additional passives here that you'll want to get. Tenacious Sweep. Grit is now active during the attack. That means you can't be knocked down or staggered while you're doing that sweep. And then Coup de Grace is really nice. It basically gives you an extra attack after the sweep. So when you press that basic attack button, after completing the sweep, you follow up with a powerful downward stab that deals 125% weapon damage. So that's a very strong attack as well. Now, for the third ability, like I said, this is kind of flexible. I am going with Skewer from the Impaler tree, and that's really because of the bleed. So you can see rush forward, skewer your target, dealing 125% weapon damage, and applies bleed, 10% weapon damage for every second for 10 seconds. So it's really nice to start a fight with the skewer ability. This gives you a sort of a mini gap closer. It's not super long distance, but it will close the distance slightly for you. And then it's going to apply that bleed. There are other passives that we'll want to get eventually in the spear skill line that give us, bonus damage based on status effects that we've applied with the spear. Other passives you can think about in the zoner tree, Deadly Reach gives you 10% critical chance. And then under the Impaler tree, Crippling Jabs, your light attack can apply a slow, so that's another debuff for you. Also 15% damage against targets with less than 30% health for the Finishing Blow passive, that's really strong. Also, we've got Exposed Wounds, 15% critical chance against targets with bleed. So obviously, if you're not using Skewer, then you probably would pass on this. These two work together really well. Other things that I'll be working towards in the final version of this build, the Exploited Weakness passive. This is what we talked about when we mentioned debuffs on your target actually increase your damage. You can get 30% bonus damage if you have up to 3 debuffs on a target. So that's why we have Bleed, we have Slow, and you have Stun. So that'll be really nice to unlock eventually. Also, Exacerbating Crits. Critical hits extend the duration of those spear debuffs and damage over time effects by 20%. So I think you get sort of the idea. This is going to be a very debuffed, focused build with a lot of defensive options and healing once we talk about the life staff. Let's get a couple more enemies going just so you can see a few more of the combos here. Missed that one. But having sweep early definitely helps, and then you can combine that up with your vault kick for a big stun. Both the sweep and the vault kick can hit multiple targets at once, so you want to keep that in mind for your crowd control. And then as far as the life staff skill tree, we can check that out as well. Starting off with Orb of Protection, so this gives you a bit of a defensive buff here. 15% Fortify for 20 seconds. Can also heal an ally, and it can deal damage as well. Then we're combining that with Beacon, so this shoots out a projectile. Also can deal damage attached to a target and then heal nearby allies and then yourself. And then the third ability I'm liking on this build is called Sacred Ground. So this creates an area on the ground for 15 seconds that also heals while you are standing in it. So we have basically a lot of AoE heals and defensive skills on this build. For Beacon, you want to make sure you pick up some of the passives for this as well. Infused Light gives a larger area of effect, 50% larger. And then Radiance's Blessing, the beacon lasts for 5 seconds. This is going to be very important because this does have a long cooldown, 35 seconds. So making that last as long as possible is very important. So the way that I would use a life staff, number one, it's great for pulling targets. But I would just kind of use it like maybe healing and defensive skills in other games like ESO, for example. The nice thing about the life staff is it does put those effects on the ground. So those will stay active while you're fighting, which is really nice. So I can put those buffs down, switch to my spear, throw in a couple dodge rolls, alternate my beacon and my sacred ground, so I always have some healing. You always have some sort of effect that you can stand in to either increase your armor or have passive healing. It's a really nice combo, especially for soloing when you have multiple enemies, because you will be taking damage. It's pretty much impossible to dodge all damage. But in this case, even if we are getting hit, we'll be able to heal up pretty well. Oop, looks like I got some help on this one. All right, everybody, and with that said, that's going to wrap up our first New World build, the easy solo Templar setup, Spear and Life Staff. I had a blast playing this build in the last beta for New World, and I'll be bringing it out for the live release as well. If you'd like to see more information about this build as well as future updates, I will have a written guide linked down below. We also have a complete New World wiki guide set up over at rpgdojo.com. That's my new website for some of the biggest RPGs and MMOs coming out right now. So definitely go check out those links if you're interested. Those will be in the description and the pinned comment down below. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, do us a favor, please like and subscribe to us right here. We are a brand new channel on YouTube, and every single like, comment, or subscription matters a great deal. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you around in the next one. Bye.